So one of the things I wanted to talk about, because something that often happens to me when I'm talking to different guys about what I actually find attractive in men, they either regard me with skepticism or they have to say that I'm like a genetic outlier or that I'm, some kind of freak. And so I'll tell a story, and hopefully I'll be able to better explain how I think. Because a lot of people, they expect women to like muscular guys, to like guys who are all brawn and no brain. And, so I was at a supernova convention with some nerd boys that I was friends with, and they were into the whole red pill thing and were, telling me about how, that women just are never attracted to guys like them. And I had to tell them this story about this guy that I did actually like who was a nerd boy, and I got really hung up on him, and it took a lot of convincing to even get them to believe that story. But another story I can tell is I think either earlier this year or late last year, well, actually no, it's been the case for a couple of years that I had a little crush on a YouTuber named Sam O'Nella. Just because in his videos he's so witty and so funny and so smart. And also I did a bit of digging and I found out that, physically he was my type as well. And so I was, he was one of my celebrity crushes for a while. And, I was going through this phase for a while where I just didn't feel safe feeling attracted to guys that I knew in the real world because I'd been really heartbroken by the nerd boy that I really liked last year. And so, I was watching Salmonella's videos really obsessively for a while. Well, obsessively might be too strong a term, but I was binge watching them. And, I rather embarrassingly, because in his videos he talks very self-deprecatingly about his ability to form relationships with women, and in a weird way that made him more attractive, and I suppose it did because uh, when I look at potential partners, I don't like the idea that I would be highly disposable and just another notch in their belt or another woman they date and then dispose of. I would want to be remembered. And so, to me, the idea of being with a guy who hasn't had very many partners or doesn't see himself as very good at relationships is actually more interesting than being with a guy who feels very capable. And, I don't even really know what being good at dating would look like in practice. Like, does it mean being able to ask out every girl you like and having her say yes? Or does it mean, you find one woman who is in alignment with your values, who you can sit and talk with and be yourself, and, you know, you stay with that person indefinitely? To me that sounds more like being good at relationships. But, my thinking is that if a guy doesn't date a lot of different women, you know what I mean? He'd be easier to settle down with. So, yeah, I became increasingly hung up on Salmonella, and I've left a comment to that effect on one of his videos, sort of halfway thinking, oh, maybe I'll get to talk to him at some point, or, you know, maybe something could happen, maybe. But yeah, then I ended up doing a bit more digging and finding an interview he did. Sorry, something's poking my leg in an uncomfortable way. I found a video interview he did with another channel, where not only did I find that his personality was, just much more irritable and much less pleasant than it had seemed in other resources he had talked about, but also um, he was already long-term involved with a woman, and this was really rough. This was rough to find out, because it was like, oh man, even if I form a celebrity crush, it's still not safe. He can still be involved with another woman. And so, it really hit me hard. I was genuinely pretty cut up over this, because by this point I'd already been through this cycle a few times of starting to like a guy and then finding out he was already involved with another woman. And this wasn't even the last time I was going to go through that in that time. It happened at least once more before I managed to reconnect with a guy who I could really, have a potential future with, who, also is a nerd boy, that is what I am genuinely into. And I can, again, explain that, in general, nerd boys, like, particularly when they're younger than me, but even if they just seem, like, even if their just behavior is like a younger, less experienced person, there's something more appealing about them, I suppose, precisely because I expect people who are much older or much more experienced than me to be smarter by a lot. But if they're my own age or much younger, and the younger they are relative to me, the more impressive their intelligence becomes, because precisely because I don't expect them to be so smart. And yet, yet if they're able to sit there and explain things to me that I could never possibly understand on their own, that's really, really impressive, and it's really attractive. And not only that, but there's this thing that goes on where if you're an older woman and you meet younger men, they will seem more attractive to you than men your own age or older a lot of the time, precisely because, or even if they're just less experienced than you, they could be the same age or older, but if they're less experienced, there's something more attractive about that, because they seem cuter, That's the thing, if you're with a woman your own age or younger than you, to her you're always going to slightly seem like an old man. But if you're with a woman who's older than you, you're more likely to come across as charmingly boyish. And so if you're, both younger or act sort of younger, and at the same time you're sort of bookish and seem old at the same time, it comes together to create a very interesting sensation. An interesting juxtaposition of traits, which is all the more attractive. And you might say, oh, but, wouldn't nerd boys be sufficiently unattractive that none of this would matter? Well, I'm going to say no. Because, personally, I find the Ken doll type unattractive, not just because they're mindless sometimes, but also because, and not just because they can be so obsessed with appearances that it's hard to get any substance from them, but also because they're everywhere. In Hollywood, you turn on all these different movies, and all the guys in these movies are the Ken doll type. You'll get to see some nerdish guys, but they don't usually pick attractive nerdish guys to be in those movies anyway. Well, okay, sometimes they do, but that's a relatively rare archetype. What is more common is they'll deliberately pick actors to play the nerds that are as unattractive as possible in order to reinforce that value that nerd boys have to be unattractive, which is not always the truth. In my experience, there are guys who are younger than me who I've met who I could tell. Like, I could tell if I was their age or younger, I would have found them unattractive completely. But because I was older than them, they seemed less unattractive to me. So, I guess the advice I'm giving in this video is, first of all, don't make assumptions about what women will or won't find attractive. Because there are more specific things about what I'm into that I have told guys about, and they've sort of been so shocked by it that sometimes they've laughed. And, physical traits that you would not expect a woman to be into. And, and I don't want to get into that in this video because to me that's kind of gross. I'm trying to keep this tasteful. But also, what else is the point? Yeah, my point is, if you are having difficulties finding a partner, don't assume that that will be a permanent trait, because like I said, this YouTuber I was really into, he was making all these videos about how much of a hard time he was having finding a partner, so I was thinking he was a safe bet to have a celebrity crush on, and then I got crushed because he was actually involved with someone after all. So, even if you're perceiving yourself as really unattractive, it doesn't necessarily mean women will perceive you that way. And also, but also, like, you should feel good to be a nerd. Like, don't be arrogant about it, of course, but I mean, the fact that you have your uniqueness is already something to be proud of. I mean, part of the reason I like nerd boys is because usually they have these unusual interests that they're really passionate about and really able to talk about because they'll know it quite well. And so by talking to them and spending time with them, I get to see a different perspective on things, or I get to sometimes see a whole new aspect of life that I've never seen before. And again, to me, that's not only very enriching as an experience, but it's there's a abstract sort of pleasure that I get from seeing that concept through their eyes and sort of getting to sense their passion and enthusiasm for it. It's an enjoyable sensation, and I don't think I'd be the only woman who thinks like this. Um, I don't know if I am a nerd girl or not. I think that I have some nerdish traits, but I don't think I technically qualify as a standard sort of nerd because I'm not into the standard set of fandoms that nerd girls would be into. There's a few nerdish things that I do like or appreciate or respect. Uh, and but yeah, I guess it's that whole thing of you can never judge a book by its cover. You can never predict what another person might find attractive. Um, and just so yeah, don't assume that people won't like you just because you're a nerd. Like you're more likely to be able to find people who can appreciate and respect you than you might think. And also, yeah, if you're having trouble finding a partner but you really, really want one, consider older women. Because, yeah, not every 32-year-old will look like me. I mean, I'm planning on taking care of myself, so I expect to look good for a really long time into the future. And even when I start to look bad, I'm going to do things to keep myself maintained. And it's not just an external thing. I'm also working on who I am on the inside as well. Um, but I guess my what I mean is that there are women out there who you might find attractive, who might be older than you, and they might be more open to holding a relationship with you than you might expect. So, you just might want to consider that. As for myself, I'm going to keep talking to this guy who, uh, you know, I don't know whether I'd say that uh, I'm just trying to think of how to define the relationship I have with him, because we're not technically dating yet. We don't feel ready to do that, and I still need to get, like, I'm the sort of person where I need to get to know someone really, really well, or to know them for a very long time before I'm comfortable developing feelings for them. And, so I need time. Um, but yeah, that's another thing. Just because a girl doesn't like you right away, you shouldn't assume that she won't like you later. Because, I'm one of those people where I sometimes have to know a guy for a full year before I can even imagine him as a partner. And even then I have to spend some really good quality time with him. And even then, I might sort of like him, but I might still need more time because I'm, getting over personal issues. And other women will be like this. I'm not the only one who'll be this way. So, again, don't assume that you're hopeless, because you might, you still might meet someone if you are worried about that. Like, and relationships aren't for everybody. That much is true as well. But I'm just saying, you don't want to assume that your situation is more hopeless than it actually is.